Hi guys, happy Monday. Hope you guys had a really great spring break and got lots of fun things. Maybe got outside a little bit, had some fun adventures. So it's been a little while since we read The Wild Robot Escape. So we are going to talk about what kind of been happening. So we know that Roz and Brightbill took an adventure on their boat. And what happened? It started sinking and Roz sunk down, down, down into the ocean and something saved her. What was it? Do you remember? The whale. Her name was Coral. And she took Roz and Brightbill across the bay, right? But we remember that at some point to get back to the island, they would have to cross the entire ocean again. So we find Roz and Brightbill. Coral has dropped them off on the bay. We are at chapter 66, The New Land. Automobiles were gliding up and down the road, passing fields and forests and clusters of houses. None of the passengers had any idea that a robot and a goose were watching from the weeds. Our friends had been hiding there for some time, waiting for the traffic to clear, but the automobiles kept coming. Roz noticed a drain pipe that crossed under the road. The pipe was dark and grimy, but the travelers were getting desperate. Moving through this new land was difficult. There were more humans and robots and buildings and roads than ever before. Roz and Brightbill traveled far out of their way in wide circles just to avoid small towns. As the days passed, the scenery looked more familiar to Brightbill. He remembered flying over these lands on his first migration. He knew the towns would only get larger and closer together the farther they went. It would be much faster to sneak through the towns than to continue going around them. So, at night, as night fell, Roz put on fresh camouflage, and with her son watching from the sky, she crept into a town. Chapter 67, The Town. Why do you think Roz used fresh camouflage? How would her camouflage be different from the coastal lines, right? When she was hiding kind of by the shore versus being in the city. What kind of camouflage would she use in a city? My thought kind of goes to if there's other robots and people are used to seeing robots, what would her camouflage look like? Does she need camouflage in there? Can she just kind of pretend that she's a robot working? I don't know. Let's find out. Chapter 67, The Town. Pookie was a big little dog. Oh, there's a picture of Pookie. Cute guy. Pookie was a big little dog. Her body was round, her legs were short, and her ears were long. Although the dog looked funny, she was serious about protecting her home. She slapped her front paws on the windowsill and stared into the night to make sure all was well on the outside. But all was not well. A new clump of weeds had mysteriously sprouted in the yard, and Pookie needed to take a closer look. The dog whined by the back door until someone let her out. Then she scurried across the porch, down the steps, and over to the mysterious weeds. As Pookie approached, a raspy growl sounded in her throat. "Where did these weeds come from?" she said to herself, sniffing. "They weren't here this afternoon." The weeds rustled in a breeze, and that was enough to set Pookie off. The dog barked and barked and barked and barked, and then astonishingly, the weeds spoke to her in a clear, calm voice. "I am sorry if I disturbed you," said the weeds. Pookie stopped barking. Who do you think's in the weeds?
I don't know, Mom.
"I was hoping to pass through here without being seen," said the weeds. "But you saw me. You are a very good guard dog." Pookie resumed barking. "No, no, no. Shh," said the weeds. "Please stop barking." But there was no stopping Pookie. The clump of weeds decided to move. Like some sort of monster, the weeds rose up on two legs and leaped over the fence and into the neighboring yard. Felix had heard Pookie barking next door, and when the weedy monster landed in his backyard, he started barking as well. So the monster kept going, leaping fences from one yard to the next. Every house in the neighborhood seemed to have a dog, and they all began to bark about the weedy monster. Reader, you and I know the monster was actually our robot in disguise, but the dogs never did figure out what happened that night. Roz finally slunk into the shadows behind a school building and listened as the chorus of dogs settled down. That didn't go very well, said the goose as he landed beside his mother. No, it did not, said the robot. This will only be tougher in daylight. I know. I will have to try something else. Early the next morning, the sun started rising, automobiles started driving, robots started running errands. However, one of those robots was not like the rest. Roz had picked up every speck of dirt from her body, and now she blended with all the normal robots. She picked off every speck of dirt from her body, and now she blended in with all the other normal robots going about their normal morning routines. Our robot was hiding in plain sight. Hey, that was kind of my prediction from last chapter, is what kind of disguise would she need, right? Roz marched through town, turning left and right down the streets as Bright Bill watched from above. Along the way, she passed a wide variety of robots, all going about their business. There was even another Rozum marching around who looked identical to our Roz, except she was shinier and had a different unit number. It occurred to Rozum that Unit 7134, that if anyone noticed her unit number, it might bring a swift response from the Ricos. But as she continued passing houses and shops and humans and robots, there didn't seem to be any danger. Everything was going smoothly until she heard an airship flying over town.
Let me go potty.
Go for it. Our robot felt something like dread as she waited for a sleek, white airship to appear. If the Ricos found out her now, there would be no escape. But the ship that appeared wasn't white. It was black. And it flew over without stopping. Roz was safe, and suddenly she was dreaming about airships. Returning to the island would be so easy with a ship. She and Bright Bill would climb in, fire up the engines, and be home in no time at all. But it was an impossible dream. There was no safe way for our robot to get an airship. She had to find some other way home. First, she had to find her way out of this town. So Roz focused on her surroundings and continued marching alongside the walking robots, just like a normal robot. Okay, guys, so for this week's assignment, we're going to kind of do a building assignment. So every day, we're going to add on to something that we already did the day before. So last week or the week before, we made a map, and you guys made a predictive map of where you guys thought that Rozum was going to go on her journey. So I want you guys to revisit that, think about some ideas that you were right, you were wrong about, maybe make some adjustments, and we're going to build an accurate map of where Roz is headed from here on out. So we are going to start. So last chapter, we know that Coral the whale took them to a bay. So I want you guys to Google, figure out what a bay is, and that's where I want you to start your map. So start your map at the bay, and then we just read that we now know they're in a city, right? There's some pretty big descriptive words in there, lots of traffic, lots of robots, lots of tall buildings. We know that's a city. And Bright Bill mentioned that there's a bunch of cities along the way. And they decided that Gator did not decide. Bright Bill and Roz decided that it'd be best if they just went through the cities rather than trying to go all the way around them. So we know they're in a city. One of the other settings, you can talk about the town. Now they're in like a town, maybe more of a neighborhood. Remember all the dogs were barking? At Rosamund Bright Bill, as she tried to disguise herself in the backyards, going into those little suburbs or towns. So that should be one spot on your map. And yeah, so that's what you should have so far. So you need to have a bay, and you need to have the city, and you need to have a town. You can Google the difference between a town and a city. Cities typically have more stores, bigger buildings, more roads, more traffic, more businesses, like industrial kind of things. Towns are typically where people live. So neighborhoods, parks. Think about that as you draw them on your map. So make sure, though, that you're leaving enough space on your paper as you draw. I wish I don't have a piece of paper with me, but as you draw, you don't want, the city to take up the whole big spot of the page, because we know that Roz probably still has a long way to go to get to the island, right? So maybe make your stops small so you have enough space in between to add on for the next day, because we don't know where Roz is going. So we're not making predictions now. We already made our map based on predictions. Now we're making an actual map starting with the bay, city, town, and then tomorrow we're going to find out what other detail we need to have. Do not forget to add your compass rose, north, south, east, west, right? And don't forget to have your map key. So if you draw some squiggly lines for water, make sure that on your map key on a different piece of paper on the back talks about what the squiggly line represents. Make sure it represents water so we can tell at the end. All right, you guys. Well, I will see you tomorrow and we'll find out where Roz and Bright Bill are going next.